Oh, I just got on. Hi, David. You're the host now. You're okay with setting Ivy as co-host?
Hello.
David? Hi, David. You're on mute.
Hello.
Good evening, everybody. This is David Gruber. I am chair of the new Community Facilities Advisory Panel. I'm co-chairing this meeting with Ivy Arce, who's chair of the Arts and Institutions Committee. Is anybody here from NYU, by the way? I guess not. Stacy, are you from NYU?
I'm not. I'm a public member of the Arts Community Board.
Well, welcome. Okay. What's going on is that let me give you all a brief background. When we did the NYU 2031 plan, there was a restrictive declaration that gave the community 750 square feet of space, and there was all sorts of conditions and regulations that were attached to it. That was part of what was then called the Zipper Building, and now that the Zipper Building is getting close to completion, the timing is to have the community space out and marketed. So at 750 square feet, they're going to be charging $30 a square foot, which is under market, and you have to be a nonprofit. But there's some conditions that I feel that we should attach to that. I thought that somebody from NYU would be here to join us, but I guess that's not going to happen. Let me just check some of the attendees. Nope. Before I start, would anybody like to ask some questions about the framework of what we're going to be discussing tonight? Don't all answer at once. Okay, so NYU is going to put this out into the marketplace with brokers, website, in local media, and there's going to be a 30-day review period, so people could make inquiries and comment on it. That 30-day review period started last month, and we just kind of know about it. So according to the restrictive declaration, it says the review period should not be less than 30 days. Doesn't say anything about being more than 30 days. So today I asked NYU if we could extend that to 2 months, which is allowed under the restrictive declaration. And I don't think it's a big ask, and I haven't gotten any responses yet. Secondly, the other thing I asked them about, that I wanted CB2 to be the priority, that the nonprofit is in the CB2 boundaries, CB2 precinct, or at least in the CB2 area, and that and if they can make that a priority in looking at the responses that come in, that would be, I feel, appropriate. I then went on to ask him if we could have an agreement that CB2, since we have endured the construction of this and been involved with this and negotiated the Plan 2031, which this is part of, could be part of the selection process, or at least have an opportunity to review potential tenants. We are experiencing doing this. In any event, the restrictive declaration calls for NYU to be the sole person to choose the nonprofit. And I don't think they're being Machiavellian about it, but it could be that, yeah, New York Yacht Club is a nonprofit and that we're not served in anybody's interest. And certainly, I don't want to see a community group from the Bronx. I'm sure they're deserving, but we need somebody here. And I really would like NYU to make CB2 a part of the selection process, or at least, as I said, to review potential tenants. And 4, the restrictive declaration calls for engaging a nonprofit, and they have a year to sign a lease. And if they don't sign a lease within a year, it absolves NYU from its responsibility to provide this facility. And I said, I really would like the language changed from a signed lease to entering into negotiations, because we just had an experience with the Gansvoort project that was just completed, where we got 1,500 square feet at $1 a year for theaters and performing arts companies to rehearse. And that took 2 years to have it signed. Why did it? Because there was some construction and the lawyers got involved, and the lawyers gave comments and comments back and forth. I kind of do this for a living, and it's easy for a year to slip by very fast. And I do not want NYU to say, oh, they didn't sign it, it goes back to us. That's what the restrictive declaration allows them to, it allows them to reclaim the 750 square feet and use it for whatever they feel is appropriate for the university. There are other kinds of restrictions as well. So those are the things that I asked NYU to consider. And what we're going to do, and I'd like any comments on that, what I would like to do is to, at the end of this, maybe write a reso as to what we've asked NYU, or at least a letter to, or a statement, what we've asked NYU to do, which they have not yet responded to me. And if anybody has anything else that they think is appropriate, now's the time to come up. Let me see if somebody said they raised their hands. I don't see any hands up, but okay, so let me see what's in the chat. Just
Sorry, I can't find the hand thing. I'm on my iPad. Just wanted to, do we have any, like, for, if, are we allowed to recommend and have them take, if there are any nonprofits that came to community board too, that we thought were good candidates? Now, obviously we can recommend them to NYU, but can we sort of enforce or require them to take have those recommendations go through the
As it
proper
stands now,
process?
no, not as it stands now. The restrictive declaration, which by the way was done, by Margaret Chin. The restrictive declaration, what it does, it kind of fine tunes the zoning and fine tunes the provisions of a process. And after we did the ULURP, Margaret Chin and her office went in and did several things that were, I feel, difficult for CB2, like the school. And so, Robin, right now, we can't mandate or require NYU to do anything. I mean, we could try.
Well, and I'm just wondering that if we are writing a reso, that we can make that aware, some sort of, or therefore, and therefore say, that one of the therefore is being, we, strongly, whatever the language is, having, I want to make sure that we have a say. I mean, I really think the spirit of this wasn't just to like give space to any nonprofit, but it was community facility space for CB2. So
Of course, that's what the reso is going to say. I don't know how binding it. I mean,
no, I understand that, but
NYU
on the
can reject
record,
it because it's not in the restrictive declaration.
No, but I think it needs to be on the record now, and then at least if
Yeah,
they don't do
absolutely.
it,
I
at least
agree.
if they don't do it, they'll look like kind of like jerks. So
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a reso yet, or if it's going to be a letter. I think Ivy and I will talk it over, and I think that we'll talk to Janine about it. But we definitely want to plant our flag and say this is what's important to us, NYU, and let's do this in the spirit of providing a community facility that is needed in this community, and to a nonprofit that we feel reflects the needs of CB2 or its immediate surrounding area. So that's what it is. I know somebody just wrote in the chat that I want to believe against evidence to the contrary that NYU's absence here tonight doesn't reflect their contempt for our community. Well, I'm not sure I want to quite say that they're contemptuous about community, but there was somebody I spoke to today, Valentine Goldberg, and she said she couldn't make it, but I thought somebody else from NYU could come, but it's being recorded. So I can have them watch it, or they could get a copy of our recommendations. So does anybody want to say anything, clarify, expand on anything that I've said? Okay. See here. Carter?
I was gonna, sorry, I was just got home a second ago. From the arts groups, nonprofit groups, there's a very broad different types of nonprofits that help a local community, also broader than just our area, but could be very impactful to our area.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how that might be phrased, because I certainly understand what you mean. It's more a question of what doesn't qualify, but how do we articulate that in writing?
Well, it's hard to nail that down exactly, Carter,
Right.
But that's why one of our requests was that we have an opportunity to review the potential tenants to see that, who they're doing, because it's one thing to say, oh, there are people in CB4 or CB3 or CB1 for that matter. We have boundaries with all of them, and that might have an impact and would be beneficial to CB2 and using this community space. I'm certainly open to that. It can't be hard and fast around boundaries, of course, but I really think that what NYU needs to do is to let us in to the process of selection, and at least to have us review potential tenants, and then we could really kind of have a determination of that. Not everybody who's on this Zoom now has extensive experience with NYU, but I do. And, everything has to be memorialized in writing. But they always have the restrictive declaration to fall back on and say, sorry, it's not here. Sorry, we're not obligated to do it. And I don't think anybody is looking for our local elected officials to break the restrictive declaration, which would be an arduous process at best. So I'm trying to do this and approach NYU in a kind of a community, be part of the fabric of the community kind of process, and see if we could just just see if we could do this without blowing up the resolution and changing the language. A few minor things like lease instead of signed. I mean, enter into negotiated rather than signed might be a minor modification that we could, agree on. It's actually, if it's a signed lease, that might be a problem. I don't have to tell people who do this. I do it for a living. I mean, signing a lease, and when lawyers get involved, and lawyers will get involved, takes time, back and forth comments, and I don't like this part. No, I don't want it, because they're paying rent, even though it's under market, and that could drag on. And signing a hard signature may not be there in a year. And I don't.
Do we know how long the lease term is at this point, or we don't?
No, we don't. We don't. And that would certainly be something that NYU would set up, and they would present to the nonprofits, but we don't know that. I don't think NYU has thought it out either. So they're just saying, here is the restrictive declaration. And here's our marching orders, so to speak. And but I could see, talking to them, they haven't really thought it out. And questions like that, how long of a term are they offering? The rent is a good rent, let's face it. This, by the way, for those who don't know, Zipper Building, it is it's on the boundary on Houston Street, Bleecker Street. What's the other street? God, what's the cross street?
Mercer?
Huh?
Mercer?
Mercer, okay. And there's a walkway behind the buildings that are existing there now, and that's where it would be located. It doesn't front either of those three streets, but it enters through this walkway that is bounded by Silver Towers. So it's nice, what is going to be created there, which we have not seen before. There is an easement to go from Bleecker to 6th Avenue. They're going to make it a wide, not boulevard, but it's certainly a wide promenade. So that's where it's going to front. And it's a small space. We didn't fight for this space. This is something that NYU offered to us as part of their package to the community for approving the Plan 2031. So I would hope, without having hand-to-hand combat on this, that NYU, would say, okay, let's do an informal agreement, even though it's not stated hard in the RD. So that's where we are.
Well, David, why don't we just simply ask them if we can participate with them in the process?
That's what I said. That was the second
Yeah,
question.
just very simple.
Yeah.
And
That's what I said.
allow
I
it
said,
to.
let me read it to you again. That we have an agreement with NYU that CB2 can be part of the selection process and have an opportunity to review potential tenants. That's
Well,
the second question.
I just want to add that I want to make sure, can we sort of qualify it, like what we mean by that? I mean, are we going to be like, this committee, vets it, and then it has to go to full board, and then the resolution? Because I know Carter has this whole thing about process. What's the process for our involvement? Is it just like this committee will give a stamp and it goes back to NYU and we're good? Or does it have to go through?
Oh,
the
no,
whole?
I don't know. I don't know, because let's see if NYU is amenable to having as part of the process. Right now, they're controlling everything. Right now, if it's a health thing, they want their Department of Social Work to be involved with staffing it. This is an NYU controlled process. That's the way it was written in the. I'll see if I have it. I'll post the.
No, I understand, but if we're going to be part of the process, we have our own internal mechanisms, about how we approve things. And I don't want that. I don't want that to turn them off A and B. I also don't want us to spend months upon months and lose what we're advocating for, because we have to then wait for full board for everybody to agree and opine and all that stuff. I'm wondering if there's some way we can opine without going, wasting time or waiting for a vote, that then we lose our opportunity to advocate for what we want.
Well, we can, I mean, well, if we can do that, or I believe that we should bring anything that we do to the full board. I mean, Carter and I go back and forth on this all the time, but I think in this instance, we would at least present it to the full board if we go into any kind of an agreement with NYU.
Well, then we'd have to let them know that if they want as part of the process, they'll have to give us permit us to do our process before they make a decision,
I agree.
which could take a few months, at least.
But we'll see. Let's see if they're in the mood of allowing that to happen. If they say no, we don't need the few months. And they could easily say no. They could easily fall back on what the restrictive declaration was and say, sorry, guys, this is what it is in writing. This is what it was agreed to. And this is what we're going to proceed with. Ivy.
So I just want to make sure that Ingrid's question was answered.
Ingrid's question was answered.
It's in the chat. She was not aware of this community space. She wants to know what were the current terms educated.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I could dig it out. I'll
So
post-
that's one, and if we can answer that, and then the next thing is what can we do to have them come to the meeting as they didn't come tonight? I mean, that's like
well, we can't force them
the
to come
beginning
to
of a date. How
but
do we
the
get them to
restricted
come to the
declaration,
date?
by the way, is like 60 pages. I have to just isolate the part that is that we're talking about. I mean, it's a huge restricted declaration that goes into the Bleecker School, that goes into a bunch of other things. But I don't know if I have it in my computer right this minute to post it, but I could post it on our website. If I don't have it right now, we'll post it on our website, and they can take a look at it. Carter?
Yeah, so this raises a question. What is participation? And I say that, right, because, and it goes to Robin's question, if we want to make sure that the process is transparent, and that's one thing, is to participate, but not be a decision maker, so that we're part of discussions, that we're part of the review process, but NYU ultimately makes the decision. That's a different type of participation than actually doing the selecting, which, to Robin's point, is a longer process, the way that works. And I'm not, I'm not sure NYU, because it's a landlord-tenant relationship, that they ultimately may want to be the final decider on that for obvious reasons. But that doesn't mean that we can't participate to make sure that the voice is heard and the issues are raised in the selection. So I just throw that out there because that's a potentially different way of engaging. And it's the way, if I remember, we had discussed this when the cogen plant was done at NYU with the park, and they had a lot of input from the residential buildings at 250 Mercer in the earlier design process. So the final designs had input from a lot of people, but ultimately the board voted on one of two things, but there was input up along the way. And this is an opportunity, that we might be able to kind of bridge some gaps if they.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. I don't think that the cogen was part of the restrictive declaration that you're talking about.
No, it was not part of the restrictive deck, but we did, it was a separate process, but I'm just saying that there's different ways of doing engagement that's not necessarily being a decision maker, but participating in.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I thought I was pretty clear in what I said, review potential tenants. But I was trying to word it so that we don't, I was trying to word it so that they could do this without changing the essence of what they're going to fall back on, which is the restrictive declaration.
Yeah, I was just, as an example, there could be appointees from the board to the group that's making the selection at NYU.
Yeah, I
As
know that.
opposed
Get
to,
it.
I'm
Get it.
just throwing that out there, which wouldn't require a vote from the board, right? That works differently.
That's right.
Or,
Because we're not-
yeah, so I'm just,
Yeah,
a
I
little
understand.
flexibility to make it work.
But Carter, I think that before we put the horse before the cart, if NYU says no, 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 and no, that's one thing. If NYU says, and that's a good suggestion, you have a seat at the table. So even though you're not deciding, and you're right, if we're not deciding, we don't have to bring it to the board for a vote because it's not our decision, unlike what we did with Ganswort, which was our decision. But I think that what I'd like to do off of this meeting is to say, here's the ideas that we brought up, NYU. Let's have a meeting. Let's call a meeting and say, can we go to the next step on this? And that could be one meeting, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we have a seat at the table? Can we have a representative? Can we review the process with you? Can we change it from signed lease to lease negotiation? Can we make things within the CB2? And I think I said surrounding areas when I presented it just before, a priority. And can we extend the comment period? Because it's kind of ridiculous. Today is the 9th. We heard about it on the 17th, to be clear. And in the restrictive deck, there's nothing that says that it can only be 30 days. It says not less. So we could do that. I think that's an easy ask, for them to grant. And if they say no, 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 and then we'll have to take it from there. And we'll have to, we'll see. We'll have to make a decision then, but we'll see. I mean, that's the first one of extending it 30 days is the simplest ask because it's already embedded in the restrictive declaration. So I'm sorry, did someone have their hand up in the
Yeah, I raised mine again. Something a little bit less, I mean, I think the appointee is fine, but also, I mean, by sort of organically, a bunch of times, I'm thinking of DOT and the village bid on 8th Street. When they would have public art, we weren't part of the process, but they came to us. I mean, it was a little bit late in the game, but they would come to us and let us know kind of what was going on with their, selection of artwork and who it was. And at least gave us the opportunity, even though we weren't telling them what to do, we gave them sort of insights and our point of view about what we thought was good.
this
Or
was DOT, you're saying?
DOT and also the bid on 8th Street, because they had both did, the artwork, they would use DOT land so I might be conflating it, but I seem to remember both those groups would come to us. Either I would ask them or they would volunteer to come to us to let us know what was happening. And we often gave them really good feedback about things that whatever it was, they weren't considering. And so, that's a very casual way of asking NYU to come to us. But I would think at the very least, we should strongly encourage them because they would come to me at least once a year, once the NYU expansion was a done deal, just to check in and let the community at least see them in person to ask questions about whatever, about NYU or their programs. So at the very least, I would like to make sure that they come to us, to tell us what's going on with the process. If they decide they don't want us to have an
I
appointee
mean,
or something.
the smart play for NYU is to completely work with the community board on this. It's a small space, talking about 750 square feet. I'm sure they don't want to have hand-to-hand combat with us on this.
No, I agree, but it's just like,
But it's NYU, so I
it's
don't
an
know.
effort. They don't get the idea. We have to give them the idea. So, they would never volunteer to come to visit our arts and institutions. I always had to reach out to them and say, hey, we want you to come to us to talk about, what's going on with the expansion and all that. And it was always kind of a little bit, not pulling teeth, but again, it came from us, not from them. So I wish there was some way we could write in our letter or reso or something, whatever it is that
That's
they.
why I want to memorialize it in paper and writing and send it over to them and say, here's our concerns, here's what we're doing. And we could discuss, Robin, Ivy, me, we'll discuss the format of that, whether it's a reso or a letter. But yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I'm bringing this all up. For sure, you know, I want to, I mean, I can't, I don't want to use the word force NYU's hand, but certainly I want to put this on the landscape for them to consider, for sure. That's what this discussion is all about. And, you know, as I said, if NYU was smart, they would say, sure, you know, that's a good way to handle this. Let the community, you know, board, and by extension, the community, you know, get involved with this. So we'll see, you know, I hope to do this to, you know, by next week. I hope to get like a hard answer. I don't think it requires them to take it all the way up to the departing president of NYU. But who knows? Carter.
Yeah, you know, this is a great opportunity to re-engage with NYU.
Yeah.
And to establish some different ways of having a relationship with them. You know, as I said, you know, there have been some successful engagement in the past prior to the rezoning and the restrictive declaration. All, you know,
I don't think I was born yet. Is that before I was born, Carter?
No, it was when I was chair of this committee. And
that was before I was born, right?
which was a long time ago, but it was, you know, how can
Yeah,
we
of
work
course,
with them?
of course.
Because, you know, the board has had a relationship of working with NYU in the
No
past.
question about it. You know,
Right. And we've actually had a lot of members who've been, you know, faculty, obviously a
Yeah,
lot of graduates.
yeah.
And so it's an opportunity to step back in now that this building is built, have maybe a better working relationship.
Well,
And,
you know,
and also suggest to them, you know, there have public spaces that there, for example, the new theater, you know, a little more openness of use to some community groups, potentially off cycle use, you know, in the different times of the year outside the school
I
year,
agree.
et cetera.
But recent history, notwithstanding your experience,
You are correct.
recent history is that there's a lot of built up suspicion and rough, and, you know, so you're right. Absolutely. This might be a time for rapprochement, as they say in politics. And let's see if we could be successful in doing that. Yeah, there's no question. But the plus on this is NYU, Lynn Brown has retired. So there's a new kind of, lack of a better word, a community liaison administration, if that's the word for it. And so maybe this is a time for NYU to not be combative with the community. So Jeffrey Rowland saying, look at, everybody should just look at the town. It was an interesting, let me see, having NYU rep and a CB2 representative. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Time. Okay. You know, to get what we want, if it takes a month or 2 or 3 more, I'm okay on that. This might be a good small project to re-engage. So, Ivy.
So just so I understand, when you found out about the 17, it's less than 30 days. By them not showing up today, are we getting that full 30 days? Or we have to?
Well, NY part of the restrictive deck was that NYU would create a website. They probably have, but probably no one knows about it. That they were supposed to, you know, do this and send it out to brokers, and so there's a bunch of stuff that they may have done and said, "Oh, we did what we said we were going to do within this 30-day comment period." We haven't had any plans. As far as I'm concerned, this is the first time the community is really aware of this project. I mean, we were aware of it for years, that at some point this small little 750 square feet was going to come up, but I wasn't aware of the timing, because, you know, and it was kind of sprung on us, and I think that they need to like give us time to look at that, and that time might be a good time to sit down with them and try to work something out. We'll see what
So
happens.
basically, we're going to ask them on a date for them to show up.
Yeah, we're going to ask them to show
Yeah.
up, or to at least meet with
Yeah.
us, you know.
Yeah.
And meet with several of us, and say, this is what we're doing. And it would be interesting to see their both attitude and response. And I think that's what I'm interested in hearing about. And I think Lynn Brown was the executive vice president that was very involved with Plan 2031 and very involved as a liaison with the community. She recently retired. I'm not sure if there's somebody in that high level at NYU. And I hear Hamilton president is going to be moving on as well. So, we still have a lot of stuff. There's still, besides the zipper building, they have the right to do infill in the housing on Bleecker Street. There's the school, there's the Bleecker School. There's a lot of stuff yet that comes out of this Plan 2031. This is a very small relative at what we're going to have to live through with them. So, maybe you're right, Carter. Maybe this is an opportunity. Let's see what their attitude is. Call them in and say, hey, sit down. Carter volunteered to pay for lunch. So that would be the first step.
You got to figure out who you're going to have lunch with first.
What's that?
Exactly.
I mean, there's nobody here, so I'm not sure who we're asking to lunch.
What was her name? The other one that was with Lynn Brown on this. Do you remember her?
Arlene Peralta?
No.
That's who we've been engaging with.
Back 7 or 8 years ago, we were doing this. I mean, she
Oh,
was
yes, who lived on Randall's Island.
Yeah. not
Starts
Randall.
with an S, starts with an S.
Yeah, it wasn't Randall's Island. It was that other island.
I was wondering if Jonathan, Stacy, or Chris had like any input about this or what their, what their hook about getting a date with NYU would be.
Yeah, I'm waiting for hands to go up and ask.
Anyone? Stacy?
Well, I mean, I'm surprised that they are not here at this meeting tonight, but.
I'm surprised too, that the one who is Peralta's, who's now the head of the community liaison division, has an assistant called Valentine Goldberg, who I spoke with today. She told us that she was not coming, but I kind of thought that she'd have somebody from NYU here to listen, but I guess that's not happening.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, it seems that it's much more, I mean, it's going to be much more productive to get them kind of in the room on the call because we're going to have to do it over again. So I don't know the history, and I've lived here for a long time, so I know some of the history, but I don't know the specifics of the best way to approach them or have us, have them present to us.
I think,
But it seems to me they certainly should be here in this room, and they certainly should, if I were they, I would think that I would look at this as a way to reach out and be friendly to the community. So I think
that's your problem. You're using logic. something that doesn't always work, but you're perfectly right, of course. And not the third assistant to the assistant. We need to really talk to a decision maker, and that's where I'm coming from. But this is a helpful meeting, even if they don't come. We're going to write something up and say, we'll start it. Sorry that there was no one from the university here. Here's where you could watch it. It's being recorded. And so let's see what happens. There are people on this board that are very experienced with NYU. So let's see.
Alicia Hurley.
What's that?
Alicia Hurley.
You really struggled with that, didn't you? I know. Alicia Hurley. Anyway, it wasn't Randall's Island, it was the other island. That is right across
Roosevelt Island.
Roosevelt Island. So anyway, Alicia Hurley and Lynn Brown, Batman and Robin. So anyway, that's where we are. And any comments from the audience? Anybody would like to speak who's participant? Chris.
Yeah, I guess kind of the elephant in the room for me is are we talking about Morton Williams? Because what's the actual
No, we're
thing
not.
the end
We're
goal?
not.
Yeah, what's the end goal then? What are we concerned about having there? We just want to have a nice tenant?
Where, in Morton Williams?
No.
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about how we want,
it's supposed to be a nonprofit community facility.
all right.
And that's what and I don't want the New York Yacht Club, and I don't want, something that has nothing to do with CB2 or that's in any way a benefit to CB2. And if NYU says, listen, thank you for your comments, but we don't need to share this information. It's according to the RD, we could choose who we want. Then we're going to have to be tougher. And if they say, okay, let's join hands and get the right guy, get the right person, get the right organization, and then we'll be able to really do that. And I think that I don't know who's going to be moving forward, whether it's somebody in the theater, whether it's a senior citizen center, whether it's this, whether it's that. But I want to see something that's a benefit to us, not just simply somebody who's a nonprofit. That would not be something I'd be happy with.
Thanks. Yeah.
But that's a reasonable
Okay.
thing that you're asking, but we don't
Yeah.
know. We don't know.
Yeah,
This is our first dip into the pool with them on this thing. But Morton Williams is a different animal,
Sure.
which we could discuss later on. But tonight, that's a very big issue, Morton Williams, and much more complex than this. This is what they call a white box. It's just a white box, So they're going to fit it out and make it, bathroom and do what they call the core and shell. Okay.
There's Robin and then Carter.
Yeah, I'm just curious, do we have any off the top of our heads, either this group or, do we have any particular nonprofits that we are going to advocate for, and or should we start thinking about asking the wider board to sort of start coming up with a list, because NYU might be like, okay, well, we're open to this. Do you guys have any recommendations? Off the top of my head, I don't know of any groups that would need that space, but I'm sure they're out there. And Ivy and I have talked about this before, about sort of like figuring out how to bridge the gap between what we need and what the community thinks, like what the community knows or doesn't know about us, and what we can help connect them with. So I'm wondering if there's some way we could sort of be ahead of this and have
We can.
have some knowledge about what groups might go into that space that would support our community.
I think it's a good
For
idea.
them.
It's a good idea to open it up. And I think that in this letter or reso, whatever we do, we could present it next week at the full board and encourage people to, if there's something that they want to bring forward, to let us know. I mean, I like that idea. Anyhow, that's where we are with this. So,
Carter.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a group for the space, but just to give an idea of a great beneficial group is Visiting Neighbors. Visiting Neighbors is located on the same hallway as the community board office, but that's a type of organization that could bridge a gap between students and the community, as an example.
sure,
So
it
there's
could be a volunteer. It could be a volunteer vehicle for students.
yeah,
And it could be absolutely.
so there's a lot of different
Fun stuff.
ways
A
that
lot
could
of
be
stuff.
very positive. The idea is just to hopefully that outreach is happening, because some groups may not necessarily be looking that they come across this that could be contribute significantly.
Well, Ivy and I could write something that reflects Robin's idea of opening it up to a wider net. I kind of like that idea. So anybody?
So Jeffrey put a comment about the cost of 20,500 per year is not so many. There's not a lot of nonprofit could have used such a small space to afford that kind of rent.
$22,000 a year.
Yeah, it's a 700 times 30.
It's right, 1,700 a month. 1,800 a month. The way they describe it, it's their operating cost, heat and air conditioning, and they're not taking any additional thing. It's in the Robin. You had put the restricted debt in it, right? So it wasn't just pulled out of the air. They said that was, but I think it's it's the village, and $1,500 or $1,700 a month doesn't seem like a crazy rent.
No, he said he thought.
It is $30 a square foot.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to, if they come to meet up, whether it's something we can suggest, like Robin, or maybe they just give us an idea of what their parameters are, and then we can reach out back to the community saying, this is the kind of space that's available. And that will be something that we're trying to do. How do we communicate back out to the community?
Right,
And
and I think if
them
we do a good job of doing that, putting it on our website, asking some of the local papers to do an article about it, and there'll be people that we cannot even think of now that are going to come forward and say, yeah, this is something I'd be interested in. I just want to make sure that this space that we have endured so much with NYU in terms of the construction and traffic and noise and building and fighting and trying to get this, trying to get that. Then I think that I want to make sure, even in this small 750 square foot space, that at least it's something that really benefits CB2. That's what I'm looking for, and really benefits the community at large, and not just any nonprofit. Thank you very much, NYU.
Okay. Anybody else? Jonathan goes, nope, I'm done.
David, you are right not to want to lose this opportunity. Yeah, we know. Let's see what the response is. So if there's no more questions or discussion or input that anybody would like to move forward with, I'm going to end the meeting unless there's no objection to that. Okay, thank you all for coming.
Actually, I do have for our meeting, I just wanted to catch up with one I guess project. Robin, writing for the Metro No. Now that we expanded like the letter, do you want to go back to let the architects know that we're doing that? Because they wanted a letter really quickly 2 months ago, or they want a resolution, but there's no resolution because it's not a conflict.
I think
Is
all
this
we have to
this
do
project?
now is find who we are sending the letter to. My understanding after the Susan Kent and Dan Miller exchange was we should just send it to the management company, I think it was, of the building, to let them know our position. And so it just really at this point just goes, I think, to the board office who, puts it on the letterhead. We have to make sure we figure out who the people are there just to get it. I think we carbon copy perhaps some local electeds that are, applicable to that location. And that's it. That's all we do at this point. I don't think we need to, we can let them know, obviously we're doing it, but
Guys, I think you really
I
need
think
to,
that's the next step.
I think you need to do this offline. This is
Okay, all right.
just not appropriate to this germane to what we've discussed.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought it was combined meeting, but.
Yeah, it was a
okay.
combined meeting. We're gonna do it after the meeting with you, but you're the
That's
only host
That's
right
fine.
now, so
Right.
don't go. All right, so let's do that then. Thank you.
Okay,
Ivy,
thanks,
are you
everyone.
okay to end the meeting then?
At this point, we are. Let me save
Okay.
the chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all, one and all, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good
Thank
night.
you. Jeffrey, always a pleasure to speak with you. Take care.
Bye.
Jonathan, I haven't seen you in a while. Okay, guys, I'm gonna end the meeting. Okay.